So at Engaged Agility, we are very informal about things, but we do try to create an engaging learning environment in everything that we do. Feel free to ask questions as we go. Feel free to use the chat to have fun sidebars or whatever you want. And by all means, network. If y'all want to exchange email addresses and names and all that kind of stuff so we can reach out and chat later, please put that in the chat as well. But Helene has been creating wonderful learning environments for a while. I met Helene through one of my mentors, and she and Tom are partners doing A2 Agile stuff up in Ann Arbor. And Helene, when she is not traveling back and forth from Florida to Ann Arbor, does things like writes cool books and leads fun coaching weekend retreats and stuff like that. She's got a new book out right now. It's The Art of Agile Living, and she's going to tell us more about that as we go. She's going to share something like, I don't know, I always look at the agility principles and I think they apply everywhere that we go, but she's going to show us how they apply kind of in our personal lives. And I know, gosh, it's probably been a year or two ago. Helene was kind of working on this book and saying, "Hey, I've got this thing," and we kind of talked about it. And she showed me the program. It's super cool. I think y'all are going to like it, and you're going to learn a lot of stuff. Like I said earlier, ask all the questions. And Helene, let's turn it over to you.
Right. Well, thank you, Matt. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to be here and to share what I can with my practice, the Art of Agile Living. And here, let me come back and share my screen so we can start right away. Yeah, so thanks for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with everyone and to share maybe one of my favorite pastimes, which is organizing my work. As odd as that is, I like to refer to it that I feel like organizing things is my superpower. One of those things that you realize about yourself after a long time that, maybe this is something I'm really good at and really enjoy doing. And it's something that's a real positive for you when it doesn't feel like work, but it feels like play. And that's what the process feels like to me. And that's what I'm hoping it will feel like to you as well. We're going to walk through something that will help you manage the amount of overwhelm that's there for all of us both in our personal and professional lives, because those two are intertwined these days. It's not a one or the other. It's definitely combined. So that's what we're going to walk through, and I hope you've gotten some of the info that there are tools. We're going to play a little bit this evening. Hopefully you have some sticky notes, some maybe little ones, or good, I see little or slightly bigger ones. We can work with what you've got. Good, you've got paper ready and a trusty pen or pencil, something to write with. The goal is that not only will you hear about the practice, understand why it works, but actually get to play with it and get to create some of these techniques and use them for yourself by the time we're done. So it will be interactive. So great. Well, let me jump to, come on, hello, wake up. There we are. My first slide, and that is kind of why we're here, right? We're here to talk about managing and I like to use the term, our overwhelm, right? The personal things that we've got going on and professional things and all these tasks that are hitting us. And I'm going to ask you a little bit for people here, your to-do list for both work and personal. How big is your to-do list? So here's what I'd love to have you spend a little in the chat window. If your to-do list is kind of 1 to 10 things, put a 1 in the chat window. If it's like 10 to 30 things, put a 2 in the chat. And if it's over 30, put a 3. So how big is everyone's to-do list? I need my glasses for that one. All right. Yeah, I see some big ones. Right. I saw Matt's like too big to begin with. And that's exactly why we're here. And so often our to-do lists are are like what's on this slide. It's something that's kind of a linear thing, whether it's on paper, as in this example, or you've got it in some electronic tool. Chances are it's something kind of linear, and it's just like this big long list. And I don't know about you, but I really find that so distracting to see the big list of everything. Every time I'm looking at, well, what should I be working on? Where am I today? Every time I see this big long list, I'm not only distracted, but I'm discouraged. I feel like I am never going to get this all done. And that's been one of my big insights of like, there's got to be a better way to manage this. And that's what we're really going to focus on. So I want to share first what gets in the way of our getting our work done. Right? You've got a big to-do list, but we're all really smart professional people. We've achieved a lot in our careers. This should be a no-brainer, right? Getting stuff done. But there's copious books written about how to get stuff done because we're challenged. And in talking with people, as I've been writing the book and then talking with folks who've read the book and have gone to seminars like this that I've given, I've asked them, what's stopping you? What are your top disruptors that are impeding your ability to get things done? And so often it's lack of focus, right? And part of that, having that big list in front of you, is that distraction of, I've got 20, 30, 40, 100 things on my list. It's so easy to get distracted. Like, I'm working on this now, but maybe I feel like working on that other piece, right? We lose this ability to stay focused and get one thing done and get it done well. We often have trouble identifying when we're done. I had someone actually ask me that not long ago on, Helene, I keep working. I've got these tasks, but I could keep going on them forever. If your task is, I'm trying to research buying a bottle cage for my bike. Well, I could probably spend hours researching things. How do I know what I've done? Right? So it's defining what I need it to be, or if I'm doing work for someone else, what is really done, right? How do I package that so that I know it's completed? And so often it's what order do I put things in? When do I do some of these tasks? I've got so many of them. I've got to have some way of organizing it. Yes, your to-do list might have things that I need to do today or tomorrow, but I still hear people tell me that they struggle with organizing the work and identifying when to get things done. So these are some of the top disruptors that I've been seeing from people. And this is where I feel our agile practices that our teams use, that we've worked with our teams, really help. So we ask our teams to break work into small chunks, right? So that things don't feel so large. And we know breaking things into something smaller helps us actually get things done sooner. A smaller chunk is a smaller piece of work. We also work on building focus, and we talk about doing one thing at a time. That's part of our focus. And we're looking for tight feedback loops, right? Of getting something out, getting some feedback, and being able to move on. So we ask our teams to do this. And I'm going to ask, are many people here because you're part of Matt's Engaged Agility Network? Is everyone here to some degree familiar with Agile? And if you could give me yeah.
I know of at least one or two that are not.
Okay. All right. So part of what we ask our teams to do when we're our Agile teams is to break work down. We ask them to do just one thing at a time. We're looking to have deliver things more frequently, smaller bits, but more frequently to get that feedback. We ask our teams to do this all the time. Why aren't we doing it for our own work? Right? The same discipline we ask our teams to do, we can do. So I'm taking a piece and a page from the Agile book, of doing small chunks, focus, and feedback, and adding one more piece to it. And that is what I call the sense of touch, a kinesthetic approach. And this is something that I have felt is really powerful and has started to make the difference in just having a bunch of work out there that just never seems to get done to something that is concrete and real to me that I can and work with. And we neglect is how important the sense of touch is. And this whole sense of kinesthetics has really been around for like over 180 years, that people have been talking about and studying this sense of touch, that to the point where at one point they have called this the sixth sense, that even though we have touch as one of our five senses, this kinesthetic sense of how the muscles and the tendons and the nerves react to something physical and tangible, and how that has a connection with the brain, as it makes this feel very real, right? I can touch it and feel it. It's square, it's concrete, and there's this mind-body connection that is very powerful that we're going to tap into. As humans, we've evolved to work in a physical world, interact with physical things. We just evolved and we work with that better than things on screens. This is not to say we don't value some of those tools that we have, and I certainly use electronic tools, but you're going to find that I found that the most powerful approach is to get something physical, kinesthetic, and in front of me that helps me focus. So we're going to play with this kinesthetic approach. I'm going to have you actually do it, and start to feel the power of having something in your hands and watching work become real and move its way through, being worked on to being done, and getting that sense of accomplishment. So my goal is that you'll have a sense of what's working for you, and maybe be able to walk away after the session and try it for a week and see how it works for you. So as we ask our teams, we ask them to make their work visible. And this is exactly what we want to do for our own work. This is why I start with those nice little Post-its, the 1.5 by 2-inch Post-its, because I'm transforming this to-do list that I have maybe in my head. I've got a million things that I'm trying to do for home, for work, for maybe some other organizations, volunteer organizations I'm involved with. I've got all these to-do items, and they're sitting there here generally. And I tend to forget some things over time, right? I take it from this concept into something concrete and adding that kinesthetic approach to it. So let's play a little bit right now. Okay. So I want to ask you, what's on your mind right now? You've got your Post-its. If you've got the little ones, great. And what I'd like you to do is write down at least 3 tasks of your to-do list that you have in your head right now. Make at least one of them work and one of them personal and life related. Use the little stickies, and 1 task per Post-it note. So you're going to start gathering a whole bunch of these little ones sitting on your desk in front of you. So let's just spend a couple minutes, and if we're done sooner, I'll gauge by it as you're working. If people looking around that they're done, we'll finish earlier. But start writing down what's in your head right now. What's that to-do list? Home and work and everything else. Do the same. going. I always feel like I have a lot. Is everyone pretty much done? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. You don't need to keep going.
I could write for another hour and a half if you gave me
I
time.
know.
I
The
realize
same. Yep.
I told you my to-do list was too much.
Oop. Yeah, I know. I have the same challenge. I have things planned out, but I gave myself a moment to write a few more. It's like, yeah, it just keeps going. So this is great. We've got things out. We've got them from our head into something concrete, right? We've got these stickies sitting all over our desks right now, and that's a fine thing. So let's look at them for a moment, right? And maybe yours might look like something like this. And here's what mine had looked like at one point. Being a project manager for many years, there's always the ever-present status report. I remember having to do those just about every week, write a status report, week or 2 weeks if I was really lucky. So I might have a sticky that says, write the report. Maybe I'm giving a talk to another group. This was Mari. I gave a talk to her group over at the University of Michigan back in February. So that was one of my to-dos. Well, let me give a talk to her group. Okay. And maybe I have email. And Matt and I were just talking about his ever-present email inbox that he's been trying to get on top of. So this is a real thing. So you might have these as your some of the items on your stickies, right? But when I look at that, this still feels a little big. I still feel like it's not clear on, well, how big is that item and how long is it going to take me to do it and when should I get started on it? And this give the talk to Mari's group must be something that, gosh, I have to really think about that. So in part of defining the work, we want to help define done, right? How do I put that little package together so that I really know when I'm completed with it, giving myself a little bit of a time box and definition. So here's one example of that report. I like to break it down into more than one thing. Maybe write a first draft of the report. So often, if it's something that you do on a regular basis, chances are you've got maybe a template or something you can start with. So you can get some of the template, the layout done, and maybe I'll bullet list some of the items that I don't have the information for yet, right? So at least I get started. Now I know who I have to go out and get some info. My second task might be do the second draft where I can fill in the bullet items. And the final report, proofread it, spell check it, hand it in. So that one sticky, that one task actually broke out into 3. This was my one way to begin to break things down into smaller chunks. And I'm not the only one talking about this. There was a reference out even on Trello, if anyone uses that as one of their tools. They've got one, they call it micro productivity, breaking tasks into smaller steps. I'm not the only one talking about trying to get things into smaller bits, and there's a lot of value in that. My giving the talk to Mari's group, well, that was actually a lot more than I had bargained for when I just wrote that one little sticky. Well, she needed an abstract, she needed, a photo, a PDF of some materials, and what are the needs, much like what we needed here. Then I spoke with her mom. She was a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan. So she wanted to make sure I was well ready to give the talk and that she was ready to support me. So we had a discussion beforehand. I took notes, and then it was a matter of updating slides based on my notes with her. So you could just see it started to snowball. And I saw each one of these I made as its own separate sticky. And you can see how I began to break the work down into smaller chunks. The beauty of the smaller chunks is I can now just do a little bit at a time. And I can do a little bit, get it done, and start to feel like I'm actually getting something completed. I can get that little bit of a boost of seeing work get done as I break things into smaller bits. So let's look at, and maybe my email, like the ever-present email. How how do I get myself through email on a regular basis? And these might even be recurring things, like every day, every hour. I go through, scan through the email, delete anything that can be deleted. I scan through what are the top 2 or 3 items that need immediate attention and respond to those. And maybe look through it and sort the message and either put tags on them, put them in folders, color code them in some way for me to come back to them. Right? Some way to
Really
get,
good at the first one, Helene. I scan through and delete the ones.
yeah.
And then by the time I get back to do it again, I have to scan through and delete more. And then the second step there, I never get to it. I'm always like, I got to get stuff cleaned out that I don't care about first, right?
Right. And maybe it's you limit yourself on what am I deleting? How about just deleting the things that came in today? Right? Rather than going through and let's really clean out that inbox of like all the historical things. At least that's how I approach it, because yeah, I actually have an inbox that has a lot of historical stuff, but I go through on a regular basis and get rid of stuff that just came in that I really don't need to have. So yeah. So, and we all have our little tips and approaches. And that's part of the goal, right? Start to think about how can I break it down into like a little smaller bits to begin to get the work done. So now that we kind of get a sense, right? And then you're probably looking at the stickies that you wrote that I asked you to write, at least 3, and you started to put some together. You now might be looking at them and realizing they might be a little big, right? So let's have you rewrite things and break them down into smaller chunks. So you may have to rewrite some, or if they look really good to you, then write a few more. I think I have a 4-minute timer on here, but we are not going to spend 4 minutes on that. I'll start it, but let's just see where people are. Spend maybe a minute or 2, right? And let's rewrite that list and just really think about, as you saw my examples, how to break that down into something a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable. Play with it a little bit. Okay. Seeing some people working, some people look like you've got things broken down.
Some people may not have brought Post-its and are using their computer.
Oh, you're using your computer. Try it. Get a sticky out. Try a couple. And so you've got it on your computer. I encourage you, if you're willing to play, and then you can help yourself on what feels, which one feels better or how they feel different. So good. All right. Looks like we've gotten enough through, right? We got some feedback people have written out, and we've gotten a few more things put together. How did that feel as you start to break it down a little bit more? How did that feel as you defined the work in maybe smaller bits? You thought about it a little bit more.
Less overwhelming.
Really? How was it less overwhelming, Judy? If that was Judy who answered.
Hi, yes, it was Judy. Well, because there's more definition to it, more preciseness. So it's easier to see a clearer path on what needed to be done.
Oh, excellent. That is a real success just right there. Being able to see that. And that's one of the things that I found, like my example of giving a talk to Mari's group. Well, that sounded relatively easy until I really thought about it. It just snowballed to like 8 things and could be more. Great. How about anyone else? How did that feel?
I can add something. I think the beauty of breaking down the work in a granular form also helps with estimation. If you are doing the estimation in hours, or you're giving story points in Fibonacci series, that also helps in understanding how much of an effort is needed to get to the final, to get it done.
Yes, excellent. That is a beautiful point. And you're a good lead in to the next piece of this. But before I lead that in, I want to hear, does anyone want to share anything else before we
Helene, I'm finding myself looking at them and making some judgments of what are actual fixed commitments that I have to do, a la taxes, a la classes,
Oh,
a
stop,
la
stop.
things that I have fixed commitments. And then there's the ones where I'm looking at and we're trying to first and foremost remind myself, what's my big goals? What's my big goals? Because I don't want to get so far down into the weeds and details on some things that are of lesser priority. So I have to admit, I'm kind of, yeah, I know that T word, but they are coming. And they're more complex for me this year. So yeah, I'm trying to make sure priority wise too. I'm kind of sanity checking before I get too down on maybe breaking down stuff that are as of less importance for things that are the bigger picture.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Those are good insights. And as we work through, I run into those as well. And the process that I'm going to talk you through and walk you through has a way to handle that. Exactly. What's coming up now? What are things that are further on down the line? And how far do I break things down for those things? And how do I handle that? And order things. Perfect. Well,
I have found that doing this task allows me to think of different approaches. One of the tasks I have is I'm going to be selling my home and decluttering it and staging it. And so how I go about doing every room in the house, where I might spend each time in each room, I've decided, okay, well, maybe I do a flash declutter in each room first, get all the, donations and stuff gone and out. And then I go buy boxes so I can box up all the stuff that it needs to get removed. So there's a lot of different approaches and ideas kind of start multiplying about how to approach getting things done.
Right. That's excellent, Pamela. And may I ask, if prior to my having you write these down on stickies, how might you have handled it before?
A good old fashioned to-do list, really.
Right. Yeah.
But I come from an agile world, so my desk at work and I have like a whiteboard with a Kanban on it, and I usually get things done that way because I am a tactile person.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Right now I'm doing it in mural only because I have all the Post-its packed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. And that's what I was looking for too, because sometimes the way we were, might have done it before was, kind of like my give talk to Mari's group, and just I would have left it as like 1 or 2 stickies. And then it's when you really think about it and you try to break it into smaller chunks that you, as you say, you thought of different ways to approach completing it. And that's a real win right there. That is a fantastic.
All batches.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent. Small batches. So we also talked about one of the values of getting it small, and we know this from working with our teams, is that we can estimate better. So that is one of my next approaches as well. Do that there. Okay. Is now that I've got the work defined, I estimate it. And I know there's a lot of discussions around in the whole community about estimates and what should you use for estimates, and should we even estimate our work? But there's something that I realized about myself. Like when I just had a bunch of sticky notes with tasks on them, and I'd spend all my time, I'd order them exactly right and say, okay, I'm going to work on, here's the list, I'm going to do things. And it's, Monday morning, and I get out and sit at my desk and I look at the first thing on the list and I go, I really don't feel like doing that right now. Am I the only one? I might be the only one that this is like my work aversion behavior, that I look at it and go, I really just don't feel like doing that draft, or oh, I really don't feel like doing this piece. And without the estimate, right, it's easy to fall into that I'm like, I just don't feel like doing it. I'll ignore it and move on to something a little bit more fun, right? Which may not be the most important thing that I need to do, but it's more fun because, well, I'm reacting to my emotions. But the moment I have an estimate on it, and I'll see that that estimate is actually somewhat small or smaller than what I was like envisioning, I might look at that and go, well, I have 15 minutes, or I got 30 minutes I can spend on that piece. Maybe I'll do that because I now know it's a bit time boxed. And it's a little bit of an incentive for me to just get something done. Yep, it's small, I can get it off my list, and I should get a piece of the work done that's important to get done, and I can move on to the next most important thing to do. So estimates actually help us get past that kind of work aversion behavior that some of us have. Estimates also, help us to get the work done. How can I schedule anything in my day if I have no idea how long it's going to take? And how do I know that I'm scheduling enough for me to do in a day or too much to do in a day? Am I going to feel overwhelmed by the end of the day because I've just got so much in front of me, right? How do I get anything scheduled if I don't know how big it is? So the estimates help me identify, that sense of size. And yes, the smaller chunks mean I get things done sooner. Smaller bits get things done sooner. I can get feedback, these tighter feedback loops. If the feedback is to someone else, great. Even if it's to myself, I get that sense of, here's what I've done. I can look at it and say, well, maybe I need to tweak it a little bit more, but I've learned a bit more of what I've completed. And completing things in little bits are just such key motivators to getting things done and to keeping going on getting things done. So here's my example of working with getting things ready for the talk to Mari's group. I began to estimate down, and I estimated based on if I could work on it myself uninterrupted, how long might it take me to do? Right. So it's for me uninterrupted, how long would it take? So that's one example. The status report was kind of, again, I broke it down into almost 1 hour chunks. But writing these reports, really can be these big, long time sinks. And by breaking it into something smaller, it gives me the ability to schedule it. Right? And particularly if it's a weekly report, I don't have to do it all at once. Right? I can do little bits a couple of days in a row, and get material, get things back, and be able to take that work and make it a little more, how do we say writing a report is fun, but a little more rewarding to get something done sooner, and to see yourself making progress. So that's what I was really after as I start to estimate things. And I estimate things from no less than 5 minutes and no more than 2 hours. Because honestly, how often can you spend more than 2 hours working on your own, uninterrupted, to completion? Today's world, very often getting 2 hours, you're lucky if you can get 2 hours. Now, sometimes there are extraneous things, or there are extraneous circumstances where you might be taking a training class. You take an engaged agility training class. Maybe it's an all-day class. Yes, that trumps everything. As I'm spending the whole day in training. But for my to-do list items, I really try to keep it to 5 minutes to 2 hours. And I'd like you to do the same for now your stickies that you have in front of you. So you've got a whole bunch in front of you that you worked on. Spend like the next minute or so, 5 minutes to 2 hours. Think about how long you think each one of those would take you to accomplish. So get some estimates on your items if you don't already have them. like most people have gotten estimates there in that minute. All right. How did that feel? How did that feel to start putting estimates down for those items that the little tasks that you wrote?
Hope I'm not lying to myself.
Right. A line where is your estimate too big? Are you afraid they're too large?
I'm always optimistic. Oh yeah, that'll take 5 minutes. And like some of the stuff that I've got on my list right now, we're painting our house. And I have to like rehang some doors. And anytime I start any kind of a like home improvement project, it just turns into what should have taken 10 minutes takes 25 hours, 25 days, and 14 trips to Lowe's. So
Mhm.
that's just how it works.
Yep, true. And we sometimes let ourselves get sidetracked. And I know home projects are the biggest samples and examples of scope creep. Having lived through many of home project myself. So yeah, we can be optimistic and we will learn, but as we walk through the process, we're going to learn about ourselves and our estimates and where we need to improve as we go along. But how about anyone else? How did that feel as you started to try to come up with an estimate of how long it would take to do that bit of work?
For me, it felt like it made it more doable. Putting pen to paper, breaking down the work. Okay, I now know this is going to take me a grand total of 5 hours to actually get this particular thing done. So sizing it helps me feel better.
Yeah, there's
Even
something
if it is
about that.
taxes.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something magical about that, putting the sizing on it. You also think about it a little more strongly and a little more deeply, because now you're thinking, oh, if I'm really just going to do this right now, how big is that task? How long will it take? And that's one of the beauties of estimation, is that you do learn more about the work itself. Did anybody find, once they were trying to put their estimates on, that they needed to break the work down yet one more time after looking at it and realizing, maybe this is bigger than 2 hours?
Possibly I did, because some of the tasks I have are dependent on outcomes from other people, things I'm waiting on. I'm calling places that I'm dependent on to make decisions and take action.
Yeah, you're going to love my outstanding items approach as we get down to it. Great. Keep that in mind, because that's exactly what that's used for. Because yes, so often we are dependent on getting feedback from somebody else, and how do I handle that? Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Well, good. And one of the things that I do, so now you've learned, we break the work down into smaller chunks and we estimate them. Now that you kind of get the approach for doing this, next time you have a new piece of work, not only write it down on your sticky, but put the estimate on while you write it. Right. So I encourage you to blend those two steps into one as you move forward. And which is what I do whenever I come up with something, a new task, I write it down and then put the estimate. And that estimate right away lets me think about, is this the right size? Do I need to break this work down to something smaller? Or is it so small that, oh, well, maybe I can make it a little bigger by combining it with something else? That's pretty rare. But usually I'm breaking work down a little bit more. So,
Helene, I have a question, and maybe you're going to cover this later. So tell me if you are, but so often I need to get the big thing out there. It's like, I know this is way more than 2 hours. It's probably more than 2 days, but I've got to put it out there so that I know that I need to come back to it later. Like, I probably shouldn't estimate that right away. I assume I'm going to come back later and go, oh yeah, there's that big thing. I'm going to take 20 minutes right now and think about it and break it down into the small stuff. Is that?
right. We are going to cover that exactly, because that's because right now we're just getting the practice down of define the work, break it down, estimate it. We're going to get right into ordering the work. And when we start talking about ordering it and laying it out of like, when do I do things? we start to realize there are things that I'm doing today and things that I'm going to do tomorrow, the next day, and maybe next week, next month, right? And how do I best manage each of those pieces? So great, Matt. Hang on to that thought.
Awesome.
We're going to be
Right
there.
here. Maybe I should
Okay,
write it
good.
down. I'll keep it right on this.
Write it, put it on a sticky. So the next bit we want to do is talk about just that, how to order the work. We've got all this work. It's sitting here on your desk, probably in piles. I know mine is. What's the best way to begin to put something together? And before we start talking about how to order things, I want to talk about the 8-hour day myth. This concept of I have 8 hours that I can give to my employer. Generally, you know, it's kind of the rule of thumb we've gone with for many, many decades. I've got 8 hours. I should be able to do 8 hours worth of work. How many hours a day do you think you actually have to be productive? And I'll keep an eye on the chat window. Do you have any some guesses? How many hours a day do you think you really have? Oh, I love it too. Good job, Pam. 4, 5.5. 2 to 3. Yeah, 3 if it's a good day. Karen, you've got 6. Yep. And it's yes, you start to realize, I love this, a lot smaller than what a lot of us think about when we talk about the 8-hour days myth. And you know, I asked then, how much work do you usually schedule for a day, and how much of your work is interrupt driven? So when you talk about I've got half an hour, I get, or a couple of hours of like real work time that I have. What's the rest of it? Is that interrupt driven? You know, is that where you're getting a lot of things pinging you through your community that you're working with, your managers, your colleagues, coworkers? You know, what's impeding your ability to get things done on a regular basis? And you've already realized that you don't get 8 hours. And honestly, 6 hours is probably one of the best you can hope for. We know there's emails that come in, impromptu phone calls, impromptu Slack messages, text messages, DMs that we're getting from friends, colleagues, coworkers, bosses, clients, right? All those interrupt-driven things. There might be phone calls that come in. There might be things that happen at the house if we're working from home. You know, the doorbell rings, something's broken and now it has to get fixed, or you walk by and you see something needs taken care of, and it's like yet one more interruption. There's a lot that come at us a day. So absolutely, don't think that you can schedule 8 hours. 6 hours might be even too much for you. What are some of the things that also impact us? And I think, Tam, it might have been, we were talking about this at the very beginning, maybe before people came in, and you said something about keeping track and making a note of those gotta do's, those things that were, and I call them hard demands on your time.
Yeah.
Meetings that you're attending, right?
You know, it's one of those things. It's like, I already have my Kanban board. I mean, this is what I live by every day. So, and then there's the must fixes that I cannot move. They are the commitments that I just cannot move. Then there's what am I doing for work? What am I doing for my authorship? And then there's the home stuff. And every day I have to, because I'm that person who keeps wanting to make sure before I get down to the little nitty gritty detail. First and foremost, I want to go, what's advancing me to the goals that I want to accomplish for me and my family? And so that I can keep focusing in on those things instead of necessarily getting bogged down into things that I don't want to do. And for me personally, I gotta tell you, Helene, because those fixed times have been ingrained in me of being so sacrosanct, that if I have something that I want to make sure I'm progressing on for that big stuff, I time box myself in. I will make sure that I will block my calendar for, you know, Well, and also for myself, I need time for that exercise. I know that I've got to do it. And if I get it on my calendar, then I will hold myself accountable to it versus if I just leave it on necessarily a list.
That's excellent. Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm going with this, that there are the hard demands on our time. For example, meetings that you need to attend. So often, we look at our list of things to do, maybe your to-do list, right? We all talked about having these really large to-do lists. And you might look at things that you want to try to get done today, or a new piece of work that someone comes in, a new request. And you kind of look and you say, well, I'm not doing, I can fit that in for today. Sure. Until you realize, well, half of your day was spent in meetings, going to the meeting, prepping for the meeting, taking notes after the meeting, doing whatever action items there are after the meeting. And you realize that you had far less time in your day than you thought, because those hard demands on your time you neglected to think about. And it is so easy to forget that. So that's part of what I also do, and this ties into your hard demands on your time, is if I've got meetings scheduled for a day, if I've got things that have to happen at certain times, I want to make sure that I account for that in my planning, in my ordering of the work. So that's where I'm going to come to next. We talk about how to order the work. I want to first, when does it need to be completed, right? I might have, and now part of what I think Matt asked you to bring along with your sticky notes and a pen to write on would be a sheet of paper, right? So hopefully you've got some paper. And we can look at as a day. I know today is Wednesday, so maybe we think of today as Wednesday, starting our week. I'll have a task, another task, and yet another task. I start to think about the order that they need to be completed. But I really want to include hard demands on my time. So if there's something in here like attending a meeting at 10:30, along with an estimate, I now put that hard demand on my time. 10:30 a.m., a 10 first meeting, that's going to last an hour. At 12 o'clock, I've got something else going on, and that's going to last 1.5 hours, right? I start to put those hard demands on, and I lay things out, all right, top to bottom, left to right. All right, so I know you may have, some people may have Kanban boards and various techniques that you're using. Similar to that, your boards probably have things in an order. So this is the same thing here, but now you're adding those hard demands on your time. And once you start putting that in, then you start to realize how much or how little you can get done beyond those hard demands on your time.
This looks just like my desk with all my Post-its.
Yeah,
I
great.
line them out and
Yeah.
play a match game. And I really appreciate what you said, Tamara, about time boxing your items. And I literally, like, before making work visible, like you mentioned before, Helene, I take a Post-it note and, like errands, like I'm going out the door for work. What can I hit before I hit the office? And I have a Post-it of just all those things that need to go that direction. Do the same thing at work. When I'm leaving work, what things do I need to get done on the way home? And that's really helped me kind of time box, those activities where it makes sense.
It really does. That's excellent, Pamela. And you're also building focus for yourself, right?
Exactly.
You're building that discipline of these are the things you're working on right now, and that they're in front of you, and that's your focus. And that is so key to allowing yourself to actually complete something and not get distracted.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So here's an example. Now notice I had you bring 7 sheets of paper when we've only got one here and it's got a day written on it. What about, so these are things that would be done on this example, Monday. Great, but you probably have a lot more stickies on your desk for things that are going to get done sometime this week, maybe sometime this month, right? If you're painting the house, that's going to take longer than one day for mere mortals like ourselves. So
I delegated. I hired the guys.
Oh, good job. So
we tried it on our own and decided that was a bad idea.
Yeah, your involvement might really only be that little bit. But there are things that we may be doing that take longer than just today, right? And here's the beauty of my my plan is I play on the out of sight, out of mind approach to be to our benefit. So I plan the whole week out using this practice. So rather than having everything on one board or one to-do list always staring at me, and where I try to organize things at the top, I just say, what am I doing Monday? Okay, let's lay out Monday. What about Tuesday? What about Wednesday? And I put my hard demands on the time, right? If there are meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I put them on there. I include a sheet for the weekend because I don't know, my weekend seems to be almost as busy as my work days, right? With more home projects. And we'll talk about the backlog, but the backlog is those bigger items, right? That you were talking about, Matt. What do I do with those things that I know are down the line, but I don't need to break it down perfectly right now? So I start to look at planning out the week. So I look at all my stickies. What am I doing today? What do I think I can do then Tuesday, the next day? What's the next day? And I allow, of course, the plan to adapt and change, right? Because our lives are very interrupt driven. Things are going to happen. New bits of work are going to try to sneak in. Things are going to occur that need fixing, need immediate attention, and you'll have to adapt the plan as you go along. But by laying it out initially, I now allow myself to truly focus on what am I doing just right now? And that having these things planned, but not staring at me, allow me to like just put it away. It's like, I know I'm going to do, I'm attending that departmental meeting. It doesn't happen until Wednesday. I don't have to worry about it if today's Monday. I'm going to be researching some options for a project and identify top three possibilities. I don't have to do that until Thursday, right? I can now start to put things that are on my list, on my to-do list that have been hanging around here or on some big sheet of paper, lay it out. And now this allows me to just focus on today, right? So when I get my one planning sheet in front of me and it's today, that's all I need to worry about. So I'm building focus. And it's been
Helene,
this helps.
as I think about this, I think about what Pamela was saying earlier about needing to organize a bunch of stuff and try to declutter. If I walk into a room and there's a bunch of clutter, I just kind of stare around and I go, I don't even know where to start because there's so much. There's too many things that are overwhelming the view of what I'm looking at. I like putting it all where I've got the one day. And I'm like, oh, all the other stuff, I don't have to let it overwhelm me. First of all, I don't have to remember it, right? It's on the sticky note for 4 days from now or whatever. Second of all, I don't have to stare at it and let it remind me that I have to do that thing every day. Where if I just had one big wall that had every sticky note that I ever could think of that I might need to do, that would be overwhelming as well.
Exactly.
I like that part.
Yes. And that's exactly what I found as well. I mean, for many years, I tried all various techniques of organizing work, all the various Franklin planners and daytimer planners and this planner and that planner and this approach, and then Trello boards and project plans. And I tried everything. And the challenge I always had was there was just this big list that was always staring at me. That everything that I would want to do, and I couldn't keep the focus and the momentum of what am I doing today, and the momentum of actually getting anything done when I was constantly faced with this huge list that never seemed to get smaller.
Simplicity pays off.
Say that again, Pamela.
Simplicity pays off.
It really does. It really does. So this is how I came up with the 7-day plan, the weekly plan of the 7 sheets, and the planning it out. It was ability to just get things out of staring at me every day so that I could just get a general idea. And yes, it will change as the week goes on, but it's a start. So let's have you do the same, right? So take those sheets of paper that you've got and let's start ordering your items based on when they need to be completed. include those hard demands on your time. So if there's meetings out there, start putting stickies for those, put them on the sheets, plan out your week, just with what you've got in front of you. You may have a whole lot more, but let's play for a couple of minutes with what you have in front of you. Use those sheets of paper and start to plan out the week, right? Of when things look like they will get done. And to start to give you some clarity of what this would feel like. All right, so while you do it, I'm going to do the same because I wrote a whole bunch of things and I'll put them on my planning sheets. Okay. And remember ordering them top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom. Start to see how the week begins to flesh out.
I'm big on doing this for my home stuff because I have to live with it from that standpoint of balance. Now, when are you taking the kiddos to the karate? When are they going for this event? So I've realized that I've just done it naturally of, you know what, the upstairs of the house cleaning gets done on Saturday mornings, the downstairs gets done Sunday mornings, the outside gets done at this time, and it's just very much time box. I live by my calendar.
and those hard demands on your time, picking the kids up, getting them off to karate, getting them off to their after school activities, going grocery shopping, how to fit all that in. Into the day, and into all the work that's got to fit in. So I love your time boxing. I do it a lot too. Because say I'm only going to spend.
And I'm getting bigger and bigger on delegating since, you know what, if I don't have to go pick up the groceries and someone can deliver it for me, I'm all for it. If I can, I was just chatting to Pamela. I just met a real estate agent who talked specifically today about offering staging services. And I'm like, heck yeah, if somebody else can do it for you for free, do it.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm just getting to looking at everything in the chat group. So pardon my being a little behind. Yeah, I feel I have more productive time if I spread the workday over a longer period of time. Yeah. It's hard to split between personal and between work and personal life, having it all in a day. Yeah. Love it. Okay, boy.
Yes, you can, Matt.
I can't delegate, let someone else pick out my bananas.
They get them so green, and then they're just not any good when they're that green.
You can actually tell them I want 2 green bananas and 3 yellow bananas, and they generally are, from what I understand, pretty good about that.
I have trust issues.
You have trust issues.
But that's great. It's great that you start to think about and delegating, and that is one of the things that I talk about in the book, and that is for these tasks that come up. Do you have to do all of them? Does it have to be you, or can it be someone else, or can you delegate? Like, ordering your groceries online and having them delivered, right? That's one less thing that you have to run out and do.
And if you don't like the word delegate, maybe call it share the love.
Yeah. So once you start to get your work visible, you start to realize that maybe there's more on here than needs to be, that there are some other options and opportunities to share the love of the work itself. So getting that sense of what that week feels like. How did that feel as you started to move things out onto the sheets? And hopefully you got the idea that, today's Wednesday, so you put Wednesday at the top, and I have a Thursday one, and it has Thursday on the top. That you, as you started to move things around to the other days, you wrote the day of the week on the top of the sheet. How did that feel to just begin to move things around?
Relieved some pressure.
Yes, doesn't it? Yep. Yep. I was always amazed that it just relieved that pressure because it's not staring at you and you've got a plan for it. Right? You can be self-assured that you're not going to forget it because it's on the sticky, it's on the planning sheet. You're going to come back to it. You know it's there. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. A great first start at having like a first plan for you, of taking some of the work that we wrote down, we broke it out, we estimated it, and now we've put it on and tried to lay out a plan for our week. The next piece, it sounds simple, like, okay, well, now that we've just spent all our time planning, we haven't done anything yet. We need to talk about doing the work. So before I talk about doing the work, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about back at the beginning of the pandemic. Folks might remember getting masks was like a really hard thing to do. For early on, you couldn't find masks in the store. We had all these like issues getting them, and we were told you really should be wearing masks. We didn't have vaccines yet. This is like the one big way to protect yourself. And some of us, myself included, who have sewing machines and some sewing skills, got some patterns and started making masks. So that was like my pastime. One of the things I would do almost every evening. I'd sit up at my sewing room and make a bunch of masks. I was getting pretty cocky at it at the time. Like I was, I like the outside of the mask would look like this, and then the inside would have a different color. And I was playing with all different things that I put in the mask and how to, attach it and the elastic. And I was like getting pretty good at this. And getting to the point where, sitting in the sewing room night after night for an hour or two each day, I felt like I could sit and treat myself and like bring up the iPad and watch something while I was sewing, like the Great British Baking Show. It was I was having all kinds of fun. I started watching the Great British Baking Show, and I'd be so involved with like what they were doing, and I'm sewing away because I'm getting pretty cocky. I've done a couple hundred masks. I can do these in my sleep. So I started doing two things at once. I was watching TV on my iPad, and I was sewing masks. And now remember, this is what my goal was. The outside of the mask would be one color, from both sides, and the inside would be a different color on it, and so that the inside, had could handle my makeup and wouldn't look all awful after wearing it for a day. That's what I wound up creating. No, that's not the inside, and that's what the outside looks like. And somehow I took the outside and the inside and put them together and wound up with a mask that was totally not what I wanted. And that was, for me, the disadvantage of multitasking. I was, like I said, I was pretty cocky. I thought, oh, I can do this. It's so easy. I got distracted.
I think you're being too hard on yourself. That looks kind of cool.
I know, I had people say that too. It's like, no, but it's not what I wanted, right? And at the moment, it was like, no, this is waste. I created something that's not usable. It wasn't what I wanted out of it. So that's one of my multitasking stories. My brain really was only doing one thing at a time, and it was clearly watching the Great British Baking Show. It was not paying attention to what I was making, because I spent all that time putting that together, and I looked at it and I said, oh, I really feel stupid. So what's your multitasking story? Do you have an example of when you've tried to do more than one thing at once and it didn't quite work out the way you had planned? Oh, Phantom of the Opera, Max. Thanks. Yeah. But yeah, can you relate? Is there, you throw something in chat, or is there a thing you can remember where you realized you were doing more than one thing at once, and one of those things or both didn't come out the way you had planned?
So I've had a common experience where I'll be talking to my mother-in-law. I'm driving down the freeway, going to somewhere I don't normally go. Oh my God, I missed my, my exit. And it goes again.
Yes, amazing how we can do that. Like we're driving and not having accidents, but we've missed the exit. I've done that myself. Yep, yep. And we start to get those insights that from our brains that we really can do one thing at a time and do one thing well. And that's really what I'm getting at. And that is it's helping to build our focus. So when we talk about doing the work on our task list here, do the work item that's at the top of the list. Do one item at a time. When you're done with it, you can check it off and move it to the right, right? And then you can do that until everything is done or your day is done. And that's what my real focus here is. Do the top item on the list. When things are done, move them over. And I keep my focus on just that one item. And I'm going to get to, I think it was Pam who had, what do I do when I'm waiting for things from other people? We're going to see that in another step or two. But the key is to keep ourselves focused on one thing at a time. Time and time again, we have seen this. We've seen organizations. I used to work for an organization that they almost prided themselves on the fact that they never said no to their customer. It was an internal company, so their customers were internal. And they never said no to their customer. So every time the customer came in and said they have a new project, a new piece of work that they wanted to get done, guess what? The organization would just spin up a project team and get that work going. Well, people within the organization were on like 4 or 5 and 6 project teams at any one time. So all this work is like moving forward at the snail's pace because you'll spend a little bit of time working on one thing and another little bit of time on the next one, a little bit on the next one, and everything just moves forward. And there's this creeping approach, and everything takes 2, 3, 4, or 5 times as long as it could have if you had worked on just one thing at a time. So I'm going to get into that in the next slide, and I'll go there now and then ask about unplanned tasks in a moment. But Matt, you've been this is a chart he derived from this book, The Quality Software Management Systems Thinking. And it is so insightful to see what happens when we shift from one thing to the next. And this is exactly why, if it's projects or tasks and that we switch from one to the next, we lose time as we have to get our brains around, where did I leave that? Where am I? Let me get into the groove. Oh yeah, I see I was in the midst of writing something. Okay, where am I next? What do I need to get? And to get back into that project or that piece of work. And when you switch to another one, you lose that. You have to get back up to speed. And by the time you're switching between 4 things and 5, well, you succeeded in spending most of your time just switching and wasting. And this is why those projects, these approaches of trying to get like 3, 4, and 5 things done at once, just a little bit each time, everything moves at a snail's pace. If you really just focused on one thing, you'd get it done. And then you can move on to the next one. And then you can move on to the next. And it's so powerful to be able to see that kind of progress. Oh, a thunderstorm's coming through.
Yep. It was just a really big flash of lightning outside. I was like, oh, and our electricity goes off when the wind blows just a little bit. So
okay, good.
What happens here? Okay.
And so you've got a co-host covered, so we all won't.
Very good.
Okay, excellent. So there's this is a great way of seeing the impact of things that we try to do too much at once. So I'm going to ask again. So we want to focus on one thing at a time. We've got our week plan, our day planned out. What about unplanned tasks? I heard a lot of people talk that it seemed like you get very little done in a day. You're probably interrupt driven. How do you handle those? How should we handle those interrupt driven things, unplanned tasks?
I think it depends on the nature of them. I mean, some things are like, oh, the house is on fire. I should call 911 now instead of writing it on a post-it.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But what if it's a, gee, can you go walk the dog? Or gee, can you go pick something up at the store on your way home? Or the boss asks, can you get me that report, on, the Jones account, right? Something new that was unplanned coming in that someone's asking you for.
Reevaluate.
Yeah, evaluate the priority and who's asking, and try to politely maintain your boundaries on what you're working on.
Yes, exactly. And you start asking some of the questions, defining done, right? Define the boundaries. What are you really asking for? How long do you think it might take, right? So it's a new task. So you start writing it down. And you start asking, when do you need it? Does it have to be today? Does it have to be this week? Do I have to do it? Can someone else do it? Right? And does it really need to be done? Right? Better understanding it, writing it down. Now, if it has to be done today, what piece of work are you going to pull off your list in order to fit this new one on? And that's really the question we want to ask ourselves. What piece of work won't get done? Don't just try to add it onto your list and say, well, I'll just work through dinner. I'll work through lunch. I'll work through dinner. I'll let my spouse take the kids to the soccer game. I'll just keep working on it. There's only so many times that we can do stuff like that without totally burning out and having that sense of overwhelm just impact us so that we just can't feel like we ever get anywhere. And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? That sense of despair that I never get anything done as I've got so much to do. We want to make sure that we can enjoy ourselves.
Helene, there's a couple of chats that I think are dead on right now that Darcy brought on about, how do you determine what is actually urgent when everyone thinks that their tasks are urgent? There's been some chat about that. And it is so interesting because, you can take this from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint. It really is one of those things of, as much as I love delegation, and I do, but I don't like the reverse from the standpoint of your lack of planning and lack of management does not constitute an emergency on my part. So let's be really clear about if I really am that person that has to help out with that. And if so, what comes off?
Yes, exactly. And what comes off? Because yes, if it's a boss kind of, or someone higher up in the organization that is saying they absolutely have to have it, having your work visualized makes that decision and that discussion a little bit easier, right? Well, and if I do this, maybe somebody else can go to that meeting that's happening in 10 minutes. That was a hard demand on my time. That I don't need to be there, right? Maybe there's ways to work around that, because I think the key is unplanned tasks. You write them down, you clarify what it means to be done with it. When does it have to happen? And how do I best fit it into my day or week? And that's the key, right? So instead of just immediately saying, oh, someone came and asked for something, I have to do it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
What's
have to
the impact if I decide not to prioritize it?
Right. But there's some other things involved with it too, because if you're acting as part of a team and someone's gotten sick themselves or their kiddo got sick, you know what? I'm willing to maybe take on a little of that extra burden because that's my team member and they're going to be there for my day when I need somebody to cover for me when I've got a similar situation. So I'm not as pedantic as I make it sound sometimes, because there's going to be other considerations that will go into it from that standpoint of, you know what, if I've had a chance to really bond with my team, of course I'm going to cover for somebody that's got a family emergency because I want them to be there for me too, because life happens, right?
Exactly. And maybe some of these things you really take to heart when you're planning the day and the week, that you allow for extra time, that you don't plan out even 6 or 4 hours of hard demand work. That if you know you're always going to be interrupt driven, you want to allow for that. Maybe you will allow for a little extra time in your day.
I worked with a really close team, and one of our fellows, his mom was in hospice,
Oh,
and we could tell that one of his coping mechanisms is he wanted to focus in on work to help him cope, and he could not say no to things. So when client demands would come up, he would just say yes. He would just say yes, and it was like,
yeah.
so the rest of us really tried our best to know that at some point something was going to happen, that we were going to have to help him. So watching out for each other is part of this too, from that standpoint of, to your point, maybe thinking about it's not just me, but that bigger picture of how are we helping for being
Yeah.
good humans too.
Exactly. That's a great example, Tam. Thanks. Yeah, of how to be there for someone else so they can be there for you too. So as we start to work through, right, we realize that there might be some days that not everything gets done, right? As we just came through some examples of, we've done our best to plan it out. We focused on one thing at a time, but you might still wind up at the end of the day and realize, not everything that I plan to do got done on my list. And I like to have this as my review your day. At the end of every day, a little bit of a retrospective. What tasks made me feel good about myself? What hindered my ability to create or to complete some of these daily tasks? Has anything changed with my estimates or the way I ordered things? Was I learning about my estimation that maybe I'm a little over ambitious and over optimistic in my estimates? So maybe I need to go back and adjust things because they are taking longer than I had thought. Maybe I need to learn more to time box things. Like Tam lives by her time boxes, and maybe I need to do that for some of these things that it felt like they were snowballing on me. So I give myself the opportunity at the end of the day to look at it and not beat myself up over the fact that not everything got done, but to try to understand more about what can get done, and how maybe I can improve it for the next day or the next day. And that's really one of the learnings that I take away from this. And that's to help me with my motivation. I don't want to feel that I failed, right? I want to feel that I'm learning through this process and that I'm giving myself some slack. And if not everything gets done, okay, that's fine. How can I do better the next time, right? Because I want to have a process that works for me instead of, against me. And I think that's kind of one of my biggest pet peeves of processes that make me feel bad about myself because I didn't get everything done. No, I want to have a positive sense when I walk away. Let's just adjust the plan as we go forward. So I'll end the day by reviewing the day. And then how do I handle, right, those things that don't have to get done this week? This was, leading to one of Matt's earlier questions of what do I do for those bigger items that are maybe out there that I don't want to forget, but they don't need to get done right away. And I put them on that last planning sheet that I call the backlog. And it's a list of maybe upcoming items and events. I'll estimate and order them where it makes sense, right? So things that are going to get done a little sooner in time space in the next few weeks, I'll do a little bit of an estimate on the tasks. But if they're something that's going to happen much further down the line, I might just have that one big item on it. I might not estimate it right away, but I know I'll come back to it. And I look at this, I review my backlog when I do kind of a weekly planning as I plan the upcoming week. I learned from my business partner, and I've been taking what he's done. He does his weekly planning every Sunday night. So on Sundays, he'll take out all his planning sheets, and he'll say, okay, where am I on this? What's on my backlog? And he starts laying out the next week's plan on Sunday night so that Monday morning wakes up, looks at the sheet. What am I doing today? And it was a great way to just get started. So I'll look at that backlog, and that's when I start to pull things in. Is it this week that I need to bill that next client? Is it this week that I have to worry about an employee review? Is it, when do these things happen? And I can start again out of sight, so it's out of mind. It's not bugging me, but I know I've got it accounted for, right? I've got something on the backlog sheet. Now, over time, my backlog starts to feel big. And I was talking with someone last year, and he had a genius of an approach. So he has another sheet, and he calls it the things I might want to do someday. I love it. I might want to do someday. So I don't even call it my backlog. It's not my secondary backlog. It's not it's just, I might want to do this someday. So these are a lot of the things that I have in here that are, great ideas that I had, or maybe learnings that I came away with. And maybe there's a blog post I might want to write about something. So, here's where the subject might come up, the idea might come in. There's a ton of these things that come up, and I put them on here, and lo and behold, I do come back to these. I'll look at them and I'll say, yeah, actually that's kind of fun. Maybe I will do that this week, or I've got time this week. Let's do that one. But it's a place to put those things that aren't so critical in any right-of-way sense, but they are something you don't want to forget. So I loved his approach of the things I might want to do someday, and the backlog. So you've got both places to be able to put those items that are just kind of sitting out there that don't need to be handled this week.
And
right?
why doesn't he want to put them in the same backlog? I'm just kind of curious. Why not just prioritize?
Because it got too big. Some of these were really things that I may not even have estimated yet. They were things like, oh, I want to talk to someone about what's the best kind of microphone to get. And oh, I want to talk to them about, I may want to separate the book into 2 different sections, or write another edition of the book, or, they're big. And I haven't really given it much thought, but these are just nuggets of ideas.
Oh,
But I
interesting.
don't want to forget them.
I do something.
Let's go ahead, Pam.
Sorry. I do something similar. I just have like a personal portfolio funnel, similar to what the LPM does. And I just say that's for another day.
Yes, exactly.
Developing them over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the vision board. I have the, what do I want for that future state, with the pictures and stuff of the, I want that type of life. And Helene, since you write too, oh, that idea just came up. Ooh, that might be a good one. Ooh, but I want to make sure I finish the one I'm working on now versus that next one. But it goes on to my vision board, but it's still part of that bigger thing of, that's just part of, I love to teach. I love to be able to do that stuff, and it just becomes another piece. So to me, it sounds like what I might do someday is part of that, my equivalent of that vision board, of that sort of, what's that big goal that you want. And it's still fuzzy, right? It's still fuzzy.
Right, still fuzzy, but it's critical to have that identified, have it up somewhere that you can go back to, so you've got it taken care of, and doesn't have to sit up here in your head and keep weighing you down with, like, don't forget that, don't forget this. Oh, how does it fit in with my vision? You've got it up there, and there's something powerful and rewarding about being able to get that stuff made physical like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's what the backlog is for, right? Now, I know I noticed 1 or 2 people had to drop off, and I noticed we're also kind of at an hour and a half. So rather than spending a couple minutes having you do your own, I'm going to let you do this as homework, that you can create your own backlog sheet for those upcoming items that are not required right now. So I'll let you do that.
And before we lose any more people, Helene, I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat for folks that we've got a couple of links that Helene has shared with us that I'm happy to share with you as well. It's not only the site where you can get her book, but we also have her website, and where there's 2 videos, one from a recent book launch as well as a podcast. So there's a wealth of information here that I'll go ahead and share on the chat here right now for you guys.
Yep, and I see someone asked, will we get a copy of the PowerPoint of the slides? And yes, I'll send the slides to Tam, and you can send them out as you can.
And we've recorded this, and so it'll be available and posted. Give us some time to get it edited and all that stuff and get it uploaded, but then should be available out on the YouTube channel so that folks can share it and maybe spread the love.
Spread the love. Great. So one of my last thing, and I now I've forgotten, I might have been Matt that was asking, or no, it was someone else. Maybe it was you, Pam, that you had things that you were waiting on for other people, right? And your initial reaction, and often our initial reaction is, well, that's all part of my one task that I've asked the moving company for a quote, and my task isn't done until they get that information back to me. And so it just like sits there, hanging out there, like this big pizza, meatball. And now I've got more than one thing going at a time, because that's staring at me because I'm waiting for something back, and now I want to do something else. And what I found that works better for me, and this is where I'm taking some of the best of project management in, and melding, blending it with the agile practices, is for things that I'm waiting for feedback from others, I write it down on what I call my outstanding items list. So things where I'm waiting for feedback from, whether it's quote back from a client, their reaction to it. I'm waiting for a book recommendation. I've submitted talks to conferences. I'm waiting for that kind of feedback. I might be waiting for quotes back from someone else. I write them down, and there's the example there on, I put them on the upper right side, and I use a slightly bigger Post-its, the 3x3s, and I write them on here. What am I waiting for? So now here are my tasks. My defining done of the task really comes into play, because my task was ask the moving company for a quote for moving items. That's done. If I ask them for the quote, we met with them, I can mark it done, check mark, move it over to the right. Now I put on my outstanding items. I'm waiting for that quote to come back. Maybe my next task will be review the quote, do a little feedback with them, get a refined version. Maybe the next one after that might be sign the quote and select a start date, right? I now have taken something that might have been hanging out there, bugging me, into something that feels like it's more organized and it's more planned and structured. And that's where the outstanding items comes into play. And so, yes, and my current one has a lot of things on it that I've crossed out. I've got a lot of feedback back. I'm about ready to write a new one because a lot of things are done. And I will. That'll be the first thing probably tomorrow, is write a new outstanding items list. And there are a lot of things crossed off, and things that aren't just get transferred over. If I need information back by a specific time or date, I might put that on here. I think my example has a time and date on there that I need feedback from the marketing team and on the specific date. I might even put on there when I've pinged somebody. Like, on January, is today, the 24th, pinged, and I make a little note of it. And I might ping them back again, because if I need it by the end of the week, they're going to hear from me by Friday. And here's the reason that the pings, my gentle reminders to people that I'm waiting for information back. Honestly, many people just forget. We all struggle with trying to manage our to-do lists. I used to erroneously just assume, well, they just didn't get it back to me. Clearly my request doesn't matter to them. I had a case. I manage a local user group in Michigan, and that we meet on a kind of regular basis and talk about Agile topics. And there's another user group up in the Lansing area in Michigan, and we have a good relationship. And I would often ask them, gee, would you cross-post my next meeting up on yours? Because I think your group would be as interested in hearing what we're working on, and it's all virtual anyway. And a couple of days, 3-4 days would go by, and I don't hear anything back from the organizer. And I gently ping her and ask, gee, could you, post this? Oh, Helene, thank you for letting me know. Oh, I just totally forgot. I had so many things on my plate that this just kind of fell off. And she was happy to hear and happy to have me ask her gently, could you cross-post it on your meetup as well? That's when I learned, not everybody is doing it intentionally. It's mostly unintentional that they've forgotten. So this is how I keep track of it and how I gently ask others, what about that? How is that? Are you still able to get me that information by Friday? So that's how I keep track of the things where I'm waiting for others, kind of dependencies. So what we went through, just 7 steps: define your work, estimate the work, order it, do it, review your day, keep your backlog updated, and keep track of those outstanding items. That's the basic practice and process that we went through. And it handles those top disruptors of ours, right? The lack of focus, understanding what done is, and having some order to how do we get our work done, and keeping track of what our day is like. And that's really what we're after, right? Trying to get something that works for us. And starts tapping into motivators for us, right? That sense of accomplishment is such a strong motivator of seeing work get done, and little bits get just those check marks by the end of the day, and seeing that more things have moved over to the right than were on the left, and that you actually completed things is a great motivator. And just the clarity of understanding what completion is a motivator for us. Doing this every day, right, becomes kind of that ritual. And having a daily practice is also a motivator. It's just something that we now do every day. And it's something that I know I find every day. It's been a very satisfying approach to keeping track of the work and getting it done. And, if anyone's read Dan Pink's Drive book, he defines motivators as autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we lean heavily on this practice on your autonomy. That is, you are free to schedule your work, do your work, define your work, estimate your work, right? We're giving you that autonomy. We give you the purpose so that you understand, as you're defining and breaking the work down, what that purpose is and how that fits into the bigger picture. And that lets us focus then on the mastery piece, right? Of just learning how to do things better, letting us do what we do best. If we can just get our work, the challenge of all our work under control, then I can learn and grow at what I do best. And gee, is this portable? Gee, Helene, you had me write all this stuff on sticky notes and paper, and how do I move this between work and home? And this is crazy. Well, yes, it's very portable. You've seen me pick up my sheets, and I've got my folder. I put everything in. I would take everything, bring it to work, bring it to my backpack, bring it to my work. Oh, get at my desk, open it up. What's staring at me today? What I'm working on today, Wednesday. That's what's in front of me, and that's all that I'm focused on. And I know I've got everything else taken care of because I've got my plan ready. So it is portable. And for those of you who work from home, and I know I work from home primarily, it actually moves from room to room with me. Right? If I'm in my study, it's there in my study. When I go back into the main part of the house, it follows me because I might have work things to do that I'm doing there as well, or home projects. It follows me because it's what keeps me focused. And earlier someone said, gosh, I'm retired. I don't have as many hard demands on my time. I'm kind of sliding into retirement. I find myself busier than when I was working for a for a living. It seems like we always fill all available space. So all available time gets busy. So I still find that this works for those of us who, quote, maybe not as fully engaged. So I challenge the retirees to still use this and see if you can maybe get a little more structure and fun around your retirement, that you get to do the stuff you want to do. So last slide, and so I know, thank you, Tam, for the links on the book. So this is where to get the book as well. There's that link on LeanPub. It's an ebook right now. I have also that combined, like help the book. I've got these short explanatory videos on using this method, where I'll talk about estimations or the outstanding items or the power of completion. And they're on our YouTube channel, and that's what that QR code will get you to. So you can just scan the QR code with your phone if you'd like and grab that, or just, there's the link, you can capture it from there. And we have a book forum that I've got on the A2 Agile page that is a great place for us to be able to ask questions and share experiences and ideas. So I encourage folks to spend some, if you'd like to, spend some time with some of these and spend some time chatting with me. And speaking of chat, I see an awful lot of stuff in the chat window. So what's new here? Yeah, do less work, commit to less. I like you. I like that, Tam and Matt. I layer my
That's
posts.
because Darcy was smart enough to ask. She's like, but what if it doesn't fit on one page? So that's what gendered a lot of that conversation.
I like that. I like that. Right, if it doesn't fit, get a bigger page. But then you can start to layer them, especially if they're small, right? And they really will fit in with your day. Then you can layer them a little bit, let them overlap. And as you start getting things done, the page will free up. I've had days like that too, where they get a little layered and then they free up. But try to commit to less is really the key, if you can.
If
It's
you're willing
probably
to
a
take
good
a couple
thing.
more questions too, do you plan in fun? Do you have some of those cards that help make sure that you're getting some of your own time, your fun time?
Yep. As a matter of fact, tomorrow has, I've got a Zoom meeting at 9 a.m. with someone, and then the one immediately after is boating with our friends.
Yay, good for you.
So yes,
Awesome.
and then have grocery shop, and then it's, talk to this person and then talk to that person and something else. But yes, I do. And I often will put exercise on there. There are things like you say, fun things or things that I really want to do, make sure I have time for in the day. If exercise is something, for example, that you want to make sure you make time for, absolutely put it on there. And make sure it includes, the time it takes you to like dress for the exercise. If it's like you're going for a run or a bike ride, or going to do yoga or some aerobics or weightlifting, whatever it is that you're trying to do, include, I'm going to spend 30 minutes doing a workout, but it's going to take me at least, 10 minutes on the front end and 10 minutes on the back end to change and, change again, because I got a Zoom call after it and I really don't want to be in my exercise clothes. Right? So I would,
I don't understand.
right, I would include all, if they might be okay with that. But I would include all of that. And yes, I do, because otherwise, guess what? Those are the things that fall off, right? When you say, well, I can take on this new piece of work, or I'll just spend extra time going off down this rabbit hole. Now I'm not doing those things that I really did want to do, right? I wanted to get that time in to exercise or have fun or bake something, watch a video, watch a movie with my child or grandchild. Yeah. Great question. Any other questions? I know we threw a lot of information at people tonight. I appreciate your spending the time. So we've got places to go to try to grab some more information from, and I will get the slides to Tam so that you can have those to review. You'll have the recording. And you have my email. You see it up on the screen here, but I will also throw it in chat. Helene@a2agile.com. It's the company I have with my business partner, where we help people on their navigate their agile journeys. And the Art of Agile Living is just all part of it.
All right. Thank you so much, Helene.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. You and a great group. Thanks for having me and playing along.
We loved having you. Thanks so much for coming and teaching us this stuff. And thanks everybody for hanging out a little bit late and asking all your questions. And